Disclaimer: this story explores mature emotional themes between adults. Viewer discretion is advised. It started on a Sunday, one of those gray, slow-burning afternoons when the world seems quieter than usual. I was standing in the kitchen, staring blankly out the window, my fingers wrapped around a lukewarm mug of coffee I'd forgotten to sip. The house felt hollow, not just from the silence, but from something deeper. Something that had been missing in my life for a long time. 3 years had passed since I'd remarried. James, my second husband, had seemed like a new beginning, a chance to rebuild after a marriage that had left me in pieces. But things hadn't unfolded as I'd hoped. He worked long hours, sometimes days without coming home, and even when he did, it was as if he wasn't there. We lived in the same space but occupied entirely different worlds. His son, Ethan, had moved back in with us about 6 months ago. 24, fresh out of a long-term relationship and trying to find his footing again. He was polite but distant at first, understandably. I was his father's wife, after all. Just another woman in a line of failed love stories that surrounded him. But over time, something shifted. We started talking, really talking. Over coffee in the mornings. In the garden on warm evenings. Small things that slowly became the highlight of my day. There was something in Ethan's eyes I hadn't seen in a long time in anyone's: attentiveness, understanding, a quiet presence that made me feel seen. Not as a stepmother. Not as someone's wife. But as a woman. That Sunday, the air between us felt heavier than usual. He'd come into the kitchen, tousled hair and soft eyes, and leaned casually against the counter like he'd done 100 times before. I smiled out of habit, but he didn't return it. He just looked at me. Really looked. "You seem tired," he said. His voice was low, steady. I shrugged, brushing off the ache that had been clinging to my chest for weeks. Just one of those days, I guess. Ethan walked over slowly and gently took the coffee mug from my hand, setting it down on the counter. My breath caught, not because of the gesture, but because of how close he was now. He didn't break eye contact. "You don't have to keep pretending." My pulse quickened. "Pretending what?" "That you're okay," he said. "I see it. Every day. The loneliness. The way you smile like you're trying to convince yourself you're happy." I opened my mouth to protest, but he cut me off, softly, tenderly. "You don't have to say anything. I just want you to know, I know what you need." I stood frozen, unsure of what I was feeling. The heat between us was undeniable, but it wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, older. Like two people recognizing something in each other they'd both been missing. Just then, the front door creaked open. James was home. Ethan stepped back, his eyes lingering on mine for just a second longer, filled with something unspoken, before he turned and walked out of the kitchen. I stood there, heart racing, the echo of his words haunting the silence he left behind. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face, heard the way he said those 5 words like he knew every thought I'd been trying to bury for months. "I know what you need." James had come home tired and irritable, muttering about work while half listening to my questions and brushing off my attempts at conversation. I used to get angry at how emotionally absent he'd become. Now, I just felt numb. But numbness didn't explain the way Ethan had looked at me. Or the way my stomach flipped when I remembered the way he stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was afraid to say too much. Or maybe afraid he already had. I thought about how it started, months ago, almost accidentally. James would be out of town, and Ethan and I would find ourselves alone in the same room, sharing leftover dinners or half-watched movies. He'd open up about his ex-girlfriend, how she made him feel invisible, like he was only there when she needed something. And I'd nod, understanding more than he realized. I told him about the dreams I gave up when I got married the second time, how I used to write poetry, but hadn't picked up a pen in years. We started seeing each other in those gaps, those in-between moments where it felt safe to be honest. He began leaving me notes. Little things. A quote on a sticky note. A song suggestion. A flower from the garden left by the kitchen sink. It never crossed a line, but it came close. Now, I wasn't so sure where the line even was. The next morning, James left early for a business meeting. As soon as the door closed, I felt a wave of guilt and relief in equal parts. I poured my coffee slowly, almost expecting Ethan to come into the kitchen again. But he didn't. Not until much later. When he finally appeared, his energy was different. Calm, but guarded. Like he wasn't sure where we stood now. He leaned against the doorway. About yesterday, I turned to face him, heart pounding. "Ethan, I'm sorry if I said too much." His voice was gentle, but his eyes searched mine like he was hoping I'd deny it. "I just hate seeing you act like everything's fine when I know it's not." There was a long pause before I answered. "You didn't say too much. You said exactly what I've been afraid to admit." He stepped closer, a slight hesitation in his stride. "Then why are we pretending?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was because we weren't supposed to feel this way. Maybe it was fear of what it would mean if we gave in. Or maybe it was because no one had ever truly seen me the way he did. We stood there in silence, the tension between us so thick it felt electric. I could feel the pull, the urge to close the distance. But I didn't move. And neither did he. Not yet. The days that followed blurred together, but the tension between Ethan and me only sharpened. We were careful, too careful. The air around us crackled every time we were in the same room. Words we couldn't say hung between us like a fragile web, one touch away from breaking. James, oblivious, had started to stay at the office later than usual. A big merger or maybe just another excuse not to be home. Either way, his absence grew longer, and so did the silence in our house. And then, something shifted. One evening, I walked past Ethan's door and heard the soft strumming of his guitar. I paused, remembering he used to play when he needed to think. I stood there quietly listening. The melody was slow, aching, like someone trying to say something they didn't have the words for. Later that night, I found a note slipped under my bedroom door, "Meet me on the deck." Midnight. My heart thundered as I stared at it. Part of me knew I shouldn't go. The other part, the lonelier, quieter part, was already moving before I could talk myself out of it. The backyard was cool, lit only by the moon and a single string of lights we never bothered to take down after last summer. Ethan stood by the railing, facing the dark sky, hands in his pockets. "You came," he said without turning around. "I didn't know if I should," I whispered. He finally looked at me. "I needed to see you." Away from the house. Away from him. The way he said him sent a chill through me, not because of anger, but because it was the first time he'd acknowledged the truth out loud. That we were caught in something fragile, dangerous, and completely real. "I keep trying to ignore this," he said, voice low. "But you feel it too." "I know you do." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I stepped closer, drawn in by something deeper than want. It was recognition. Of pain, of neglect, of years spent being invisible in someone else's life. Before either of us could speak again, a sudden flash of headlights lit up the backyard. A car door slammed. "James." I turned to Ethan in panic. He wasn't supposed to be home. Ethan's jaw clenched. "I'll handle it." "No," I said quickly. "We can't let him know. Not like this." We both knew we hadn't technically crossed a line, but emotionally, we were in territory there was no coming back from. I rushed inside, trying to steady my breath just as James entered through the front. His eyes were sharp, scanning the house. "You up late?" he said, eyeing me. "Where's Ethan?" My voice came out too fast. "Probably asleep." He stared at me for a beat too long. Something about the way his eyes narrowed made me wonder, had he started to suspect something? And if he had, what would he do about it? James had changed. Not suddenly, but enough to notice. He'd become colder, quieter, watching me with a new intensity that felt less like affection and more like suspicion. His questions were subtle, loaded beneath the surface of everyday conversation. Where had I gone during the day? Why had I cooked Ethan's favorite meal? Wasn't it strange how much time we spent alone together? The tension inside the house was suffocating. And Ethan, he'd grown more distant, not from lack of feeling, but from restraint. Like he knew the walls were closing in and any wrong move could bring everything crashing down. But when we were alone, when our eyes met across a room, there was no hiding it. The connection was still there, stronger than ever. I was starting to unravel. One night, I found myself in the garage, sorting through old storage bins, needing a place where no one could hear me think. That's when Ethan appeared. He stepped into the dim light, his face shadowed and serious. "I can't keep pretending," he said quietly. "He knows something. I can feel it." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I'm not going to let him hurt you," he added, stepping closer. "You don't deserve the way he treats you. You never did." His words cracked something open in me. For so long, I had convinced myself I could survive the silence, the loneliness. But hearing someone fight for me? It was almost too much. "He's your father," I whispered. "This could destroy everything." "I don't care," Ethan said, eyes burning with something deeper than anger. "I'd rather lose everything than watch him break you one more day." Suddenly, the garage door creaked. We both froze. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. "James." My blood ran cold. I turned to Ethan. "You have to go. Now." But it was too late. James stepped into view, his face unreadable. He looked between us, at how close we stood, how shaken we looked, and something flickered in his expression. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. For a long moment, none of us moved. The silence was deafening. James finally broke it. "I see it now," he said softly, dangerously calm. "How long?" My heart thundered in my chest. Nothing happened. His eyes narrowed. "Doesn't have to. I can see everything I need to." Ethan stepped forward. "Don't talk to her like that." James turned on him. "Don't you speak to me like you know anything about this." About her. The room pulsed with fury and fear, all three of us locked in a standoff that had been building for months. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about forbidden feelings anymore. It was about survival. James didn't explode that night. He didn't shout or accuse. Instead, he just turned and walked away, into the house, into silence. That scared me more than if he'd screamed. The next day, he acted like nothing happened. Polite, distant, calculating. It was like living with a ghost who watched your every move. I tried to go about my routine, but I felt the shift. Ethan did too. We exchanged glances instead of words, afraid one wrong step would trigger whatever James was planning. Then, 2 days later, the ground shifted beneath me. It was a cold afternoon when I opened the mailbox and saw the envelope. No return address, just my name in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single photo. A picture of Ethan and me from a week ago. We were in the garden. I was smiling. He was looking at me like I was the only person in the world. My hands trembled. Someone had been watching us. There was a note scrawled on the back. "Still think no one knows?" I rushed into the house and locked myself in the bathroom, my mind racing. Who took the photo? Was it James? A neighbor? I didn't know who to trust anymore. That night, I confronted Ethan. Showed him the picture. His jaw clenched. "He's setting us up. He wants to control you with this. Make you feel cornered." "But what if it wasn't him?" I asked. "What if someone else knows?" Ethan paused, eyes darting. "There's something I haven't told you." My stomach dropped. He hesitated. Before I moved back in, I was in a really bad place. After my breakup, I started therapy. I needed it. But my therapist, he's connected to my dad. He's the one who told him to bring me home instead of letting me find my own place. I frowned. "Wait, are you saying your dad planned for you to move back here?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I think he's known all along. Maybe not what would happen exactly, but enough. He wanted me close. Maybe to control me. Or maybe to watch you." The revelation hit like ice. I thought I was making my own choices, navigating my own desires. But what if I'd been part of his plan the entire time? Suddenly, the pieces started to align. The late nights, the cold distance, the calculated way James watched us without reacting. We weren't just in danger of being exposed. We were being manipulated. And the scariest part? We had no idea what James might do next. I didn't sleep after Ethan's confession. My mind spun in circles, replaying every interaction with James since Ethan moved back in. It wasn't just distance or detachment, it was strategy. I wasn't losing my grip on reality. I was being handled. The next morning, James sat at the kitchen island, sipping coffee, calm as ever. The picture was already on the table when I walked in face up. He didn't look up. Interesting male these days, isn't it? My heart raced. I said nothing. He finally met my eyes. I thought I'd give you a chance. Let you work through whatever this was. He gestured vaguely, like our lives were some passing mood. But now it's out of my hands. What does that mean? I asked, voice tight. He leaned forward, voice lower now, almost cold. I spoke with my attorney. If you try to leave, if you even think about it, I'll make sure you walk away with nothing. And Ethan? I'll ruin him. The air drained from my lungs. You've been playing some dangerous games, he said. But I'm better at them. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked out. I needed space. Air. A moment to think. I found Ethan in the backyard, pacing. The moment he saw my face, he knew. He threatened you? He asked. He said he'll destroy you. Ethan laughed bitterly. Too late for that. What do you mean? He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. A recording was already playing. James's voice, clear and venomous. I'll ruin him. You'll walk away with nothing. I stared at Ethan, shocked. I set it up yesterday. I had a feeling he'd try to trap you. He looked at me, calmer now. We have leverage. My hands trembled as I looked back down at the phone. What do we even do with this? We use it, he said. We finally end this. We spent the next few hours contacting a lawyer, someone Ethan trusted. The evidence was strong, and with the right support, we could get out without being dragged through the mud. But before we could act, James came home early. He walked into the living room just as I closed the laptop. His eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Ethan stepped in front of me. Something you didn't expect. We're done playing your game. James scoffed, starting toward us, but Ethan pulled out the phone and hit play. James froze. For once, he didn't have a comeback. Just silence. Then a laugh. Bitter. Defeated. You think this saves you? He muttered. No, I said. It frees me. He left that night. No dramatic ending, no apology. Just a slammed door and the sound of tires peeling out of the driveway. And for the first time in years, the house felt still. Safe. But as Ethan sat beside me, taking my hand in his for the first time without fear, I knew one thing was still uncertain: what came next. 2 months had passed since James left. In that time, everything changed. It wasn't easy at first. The silence that followed felt different, not dangerous, but unfamiliar. There were still legal hurdles, paperwork, tense phone calls from James's lawyer trying to negotiate damage control. But with the recording in hand, we had more power than we ever expected. And for once, I wasn't afraid to use it. The divorce moved forward. I walked away with my dignity and my freedom. Ethan stood by me through every meeting, every signature. He never pushed, never crossed any lines. We both needed time to heal, to figure out who we were without all the pressure and fear. For a while, we didn't talk about what had happened between us emotionally. Not the garden glances, not the night in the garage, not the moment he said, "I know what you need." Maybe we were afraid of ruining something fragile before it could grow. But healing brings clarity. It was a rainy Sunday morning when we finally sat down and talked, really talked. The truth poured out, gentle but honest. We admitted the feelings had been real, but born from a place of hurt and isolation. And though what we shared brought comfort, it also needed space to evolve naturally. We decided not to rush anything. No labels, no plans. Just honesty and care. What mattered most was that we were free to choose each other without guilt, fear, or manipulation. And we did. A few weeks later, we moved out of the house that held so many memories, some painful, some beautiful, and started fresh in a quieter part of town. A place where no one knew our story. Where we weren't trapped in roles. Where love could grow from peace instead of chaos. Ethan started working with the youth outreach program, helping people navigate trauma and find purpose again. I opened a small design studio, something I'd always dreamed of but never had the courage to pursue. We didn't look like a traditional couple, and we never tried to. But there was a quiet strength in what we had, built on truth, respect, and choice. Looking back, I don't regret anything. Not the pain, not the fear, not even the mistakes. Because they led me here, to freedom, to self-worth, to a love I didn't think I deserved. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Sometimes what we need isn't someone to rescue us. It's someone who sees us clearly, stands beside us, and reminds us we're allowed to want more. Even if that someone turns out to be the last person we expected. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing from you.